A translator is a reader, an interpreter, and a creator, all in one. DJ Kumar Das. Hello everyone, this is Aline Infante, and today I am going to talk about what I learned during this great subject that I'm just finishing, teaching through translation. I will also include some translation activities that we as teachers can do in the classroom. To start, I have to say I was a bit surprised when I read that there are no records of translation before Romans. Understanding the translation as transferring activities, implicit or explicit, from Greek into Roman, but nothing before that. The translation is the act of translating, to render in another language. It may sound easy, but the truth is that translating is a process that involves much more. Since the moment we start listening and learning a new language, the first action that we do or try to do is to translate. I think it's something almost natural, and it is necessary in order to start understanding. However, the process itself of translating goes beyond translating word by word, especially when we are translating a literary text. In chapter 1 of the anthology, we can find the example of Ezra Pound, whose translation of Chinese poetry became very famous in the 1920s. He had the ability or the skill to translate more than just words. That's why he insisted on the necessity to translate rhythm, diction, and movement, and to forget the awkward scholarly literal translation. It is understandable that at the very beginning, the idea was to find equivalent words to translate. However, as Pound mentioned, and more approaches later confirmed, when we are going to translate, there are more to take in consideration. A good example of that is the Bible translation work, which has been remarkable since it is probably the most translated document in all history. In chapter 2, Translating or Translation, we reviewed different approaches such as the critical approach, which presupposes a finished translation. As the name states, the point is to critique or analyze the final job of translation. But it marks a difference between literary criticism, which focuses on the literary or textual qualities of the work, and the translation criticism, which appraises the text as a translation. There is also the translation theory today, which is mainly concerned with translation criticism, but it goes further to an interdisciplinary approach. It also refers to two different concepts: overt, which refers to the translation that doesn't hide its origin, since it shows the characteristics of the L1, and the covert, which, on the other hand, takes place when the translation is not marked as a translation text of a source text. This reading made me realize the factors involved and the fact that translating is not something superficial. Actually, it's a topic that has become more relevant in recent years. However, its program is still in process. In chapter 3, we can find the objective of teaching future professionals, which is the use of language as a tool for future professional activities. With this in mind, we can consider three important elements. Proficiency in a foreign language is absolutely necessary for translating. Excellent command in the translator mother tongue is even more important. And sociocultural knowledge is extremely important, since the translator is immersed in a kind of cultural transfer. Of course, there are also some difficulties when translating. Lack of proficiency in the target language, lack of proficiency in the source language, and lack of proficiency in the intercultural competence or sensitivity. One more time, it is clear that translation is a global process that goes beyond the words. I really like to see the importance that sociocultural context has, because it's something that at the beginning can be out of the picture when we think in translation, but turns out that it's as important as the knowledge of the language. Finally, in chapter 4, we review the grammar translation method, some recent approaches to translating in the classroom, particularly the sword work, which states that translation, if harnessed, is potentially a very powerful tool for language learning, and the different steps to translation. In conclusion, teaching translation may sound something easy to do or learn, but the truth is, it involves much more than just translate a text word by word. A master knowledge of the L1 and L2, yes, is essential, but also a cultural knowledge. I think it's great that translation has gained more popularity, but it has to be seen and taught as the global subject it is. Translation as a tool to teach is very useful, but we have to be aware that the process of translation is more important than the translation product itself. Now, about the translation activities, I have to confess, I never use them in my current job. Actually, I haven't used translation activities since 2011 something, so I'm not very familiar with them. However, I know a few activities from the time I learned English. I think they were more popular before. But well, one option is when you have a group of learners and they work on translating different sections of the text. And then regroup the students to connect their parts into a full text. And it's important to have suitable connecting language. Another option is asking learners to bring in short text, proverbs, poems, songs, and present them to the class, explaining why they like them, and then use those texts to translate. Other activity is to ask learners to find different kind of text in comparison and translation. For example, recipes, emails, technical tests, post-its, etc. This can be maybe more attractive for the students since they choose the material. We can also ask learners to look at bad translations and discuss the causes of the errors. I personally like this kind of activities, and nowadays there are some translation software programs and web pages that are very useful. And finally, one more adapted to our life would be to have the learners developing a web page of a blog with their own translation work. You know, this is like a motivation for them because everybody wants to have their personal website. So in this case, they will have their personal blog, but with the translation work. And this can be really motivating for them. So this is it. Thanks for watching, and I will see you next time.